Listen, my dears, gather close. This isn't just a story about a wicked baron and a caged songbird. It's about what happens when beauty is locked in the dark, and decides to sing its own tune. By the end, you'll never hear a nightingale the same way again. All right, my lovelies, pull up your chairs and let Anime tell you a tale. Picture a village, simple and poor, nestled under the shadow of a great, grim mountain. And on that mountain, like a crown of thorns, sat Grendel Hall. Its master was Baron Alistair von Grendel. Oh, he was a cold one. Tall, thin as a rake, with hair the color of ashes and as like 2 chips of grey ice. He never came to the village except in his black carriage, windows shuttered tight, like he was carrying a secret or a corpse. But in the village, there was sunshine. Her name was Elena. Orphaned, living with her worn-out aunt, selling flowers in the marketplace. She was pretty, yes, with hair like wheat and kind eyes, but her true beauty was hidden. Until one market day. Old Ben the fiddler was playing a sad, familiar tune. And Elena, while tying a bunch of lavender, began to hum. Then to sing. Ah, children, let me tell you. That voice. It wasn't just sweet. It was like a storm and a sunrise mixed together. It soared, it whispered, it made grown men weep into their ale. It was a voice for grand opera houses, not a dusty square. The whole market fell silent, utterly spellbound. Even the birds stopped their chatter. But high up on the mountain road, a carriage had stopped. The Baron's carriage. A pale, long-fingered hand held the window shutter open a sliver. Those ice chip eyes had seen the crowd, had heard the voice that carried on the wind like a miracle. For the first time in decades, something stirred in Baron Alistair's hollow chest. Not worms. Oh no. It was the sharp, painful thrill of a collector who has just spotted the one, perfect, missing piece for his gallery. That evening, men in the Baron's livery came to Elena's aunt's cottage. They spoke of a great honor. The Baron required a maid with a cheerful disposition. The pay was a small fortune. The aunt, sick and desperate, agreed with trembling hands. Elena, nervous but seeing a way to help her only family, packed her small bag. She kissed her weeping aunt goodbye, promising to send money and visit soon. The carriage ride up the mountain was dark. The hall was a monster of stone, swallowing her whole. Mrs. Hoyoguay, a woman with a face like a locked drawer, showed her not to the servants' quarters, but down a spiral staircase into the bowels of the house. Your duties are special, Mrs. Holloway said, her voice flat. They stopped at a heavy oak door. It opened not to a scullery, but to a room that stole Elena's breath. It was beautiful. A gilded cage. Silken drapes, a plush bed, a grand piano, shelves of music. And one huge, glorious window overlooking the wild valley. But when Elena rushed to the window, her heart sank. The glass was not glass, but thick, unbreakable crystal. And the door Mrs. Holloway had just closed? She heard the heavy clunk of a lock, and the terrible rattle of a chain. Her beautiful voice had not found her a job. It had found her a prison. The gilded cage. Now, settle down, my dears. The worst part wasn't the locked door. It was the waiting. For 2 days, Elena saw no one but Mrs. Hoyoguay, who brought exquisite meals on silver trays and took away the chamber pot, all without a single word. Elena screamed, she pleaded, she beat her small fists on the unyielding crystal window until they were bruised. The only answer was the echo in her lavish tomb. On the 3rd night, he came. The lock turned, the chain slithered like a snake, and Baron Alistair von Grendel stepped inside. He seemed taller in the low light of the single oil lamp he carried. Welcome to your studio, Elena, he said. His voice was smooth, cultured, but utterly devoid of laugh. You will sing for me. I will not, she cried, backing away. You cannot keep me here. I am not a thing to be kept. Ah, but you are, he replied, placing the lamp on the piano. A thing of rare and perfect beauty. Out there, he gestured vaguely at the window, your voice would be wasted on drunken farmers. It would be sold by the common air. Here, it will remain pure. For me. A explained his rules. She would be treated with every comfort. Fine clothes, the best food, any music she desired. In return, she would sing each night at midnight. Only for him. If she refused, her end in the village would suffer. A frail woman, he mused. A sudden illness, a tragic accident, the world is so dangerous. Elena's defiance crumbled into a cold, hard lump of fear. That night, with the Baron seated in a shadowed corner, she opened her mouth and sang. It was a song of her village, a folk tune. The notes were perfect, the technique flawless, but the soul of it was shackled. The Baron listened, his eyes closed, a faint, tremulous smile on his thin lips. When she finished, he sighed, a sound of deepest satisfaction. Bella. But tomorrow, we begin with Verdi. Your voice, it was born for tragedy. And so began the routine of her imprisonment. Her world shrank to the room, the piano, and the terrifying nightly audience of one. Mrs. Holloway remained a silent ghost. But one afternoon, as Elena stood by her window, weeping softly as she watched the hawks circle free in the valley, she saw a young man below. He was trimming the overgrown hedges of a long-forgotten garden. A looked up, squinting. A saw her. Elena jerked back, but it was too late. Their eyes had met. He was young, with kind, sun-warmed features, so opposite to the Baron's chill. The next day, he was there again. Distime, he did not look away. He touched his hand to his heart, then to his lips, a simple, ancient gesture of sympathy. A tear rolled down Elena's cheek. She placed her palm against the cold crystal. He nodded, just once. His name, she would learn from whispered conversations when he daringly crept beneath her window during the Baron's absences, was Luca. And he was her first flicker of hope in the endless dark. Whispers through the crystal. Oh, my children, the heart finds a way, even through prison walls. Those secret moments with Luca became Elena's lifeline. They dashed to the patch of garden under her window, hidden by overgrown boxwoods, and they would whisper. He told her of the outside world, the village gossip, the changing seasons, the simple warmth of the sun. She told him of her terror, of the Baron's cold obsession. We must get you out, Luca whispered fiercely one afternoon, his face tipped up to hers, a tiny sprig of early bluebell in his hand. He tossed it up. It bounced off the crystal and fell back to him. A symbol of their impossible barrier. He has threatened my aunt, Elena whispered back, her breath fogging the window. He will know it was you who helped. Luca's eyes grew hard. There are other ways. The Baron goes to the city next month. A whole week. Mrs. Holloway runs the house then, but she sleeps deep after her evening sherry. A plan, fragile as a spider's squib, began to form. Luca knew where the spare keys were kept in the kitchen house. During the Baron's absence, he could take them. It could free her in the dead of night, and they could flee down the mountain, get her aunt, and disappear before the Baron returned. It was dangerous, but it was a chance. Elena lived for that plan. She sang for the Baron with a new, forced sweetness, pouring all her fear and hope into the arias. He was pleased, mistaking her passion for broken compliance. You are learning, he said one night, his voice almost warm. True art requires surrender. The day of the Baron's departure arrived. Elena watched from her window as the black carriage snaked down the mountain road. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Freedom was a week away. That first night of his absence, as moonlight silvered the valley, Elena waited by her door, listening for Luca's footsteps. What she heard instead was the soft click of her lock turning. The door opened. But it was not Luca. It was Mrs. Holloway. The housekeeper held a tray with a single glass of milk. Her face, usually a blank slate, was etched with a terrible, pitying sadness. He knows, child, she said quietly, her voice rough with disuse. Elena's blood turned to ice. "K knows what? About your whispers. About the groundskeeper boy." Mrs. Holloway set the tray down. "The Baron sees everything. He has eyes in these walls." He laughed, as a test. Before Elena could scream, two burly footmen she'd never seen before stepped from the shadows behind Mrs. Holloway. They moved with silent efficiency. One clamped a hand over her mouth. The other produced not ropes, but something far worse, a set of delicate, padded leather cuffs, connected by a short, fine chain of gleaming steel. They were designed not to chafe, but to restrain with cruel precision. They locked them onto her wrists. The chain was just long enough to let her hands move for reading or turning music pages, but no longer. "He does not wish to damage your voice," Mrs. Holloway said, tears now in her own eyes. "But you must understand the depth of your cage. The boy, Luca, has been sent away. Dismissed without reference. If he is seen near Grendel lands again, he will be shot." The door closed. The lock turned. Elena collapsed on the floor, the cold chain between her wrists clinking softly, a new, constant reminder. Her hope was shattered. And her songbird prison had just grown smaller. They duet in the dark. "All right, my darlings, wipe your eyes." This is where our Elena had to make a choice. She could lie down and let her spirit die, or she could find a new kind of strength. The chains on her wrists were light, but their meaning was heavy as lead. For days, she was a ghost of herself. She barely ate. She sang for the Baron when he returned in a flat, that voice that made him frown with displeasure. "You are grieving your foolish hope," he stated coldly one midnight after a particularly hollow performance. "Grieve it and be done. This is your world. I am your only audience. The only one who matters." His words didn't they crush her? They ignited a cold, quiet fire in her belly. "He thinks my voice is his property," she thought, staring at the chain linking her wrists. "He thinks he owns its very soul." She began to study him, this man who hid from the world. She saw the way he flinched at sudden loud noises, the way he never spoke of family, the way he craved the control her voice gave him. His obsession was not just with beauty, she realized. It was with order. Her voice was a perfect, predictable instrument in his chaotic, lonely world. So, Elena started to sing differently. Not with rebellion, but with a calculated, venomous sweetness. She began to choose her arias not for their beauty, but for their stories. She sang of betrayed kings, of murdered lovers, of vengeful ghosts. She poured every ounce of her pain, her anger, her longing for Luca and the sun, into those tragic roles. She wasn't just singing Verdi, she was becoming the tragic heroines. The effect on the Baron was slow, but profound. The music was no longer a soothing balm. It began to haunt him. They jumped at shadows in the hallways. He started drinking more heavily. He began muttering to himself. Her voice, trapped in the stone hall with him, was becoming a poison, seeping into his mind. Elena also noticed something else. Her room, she was sure, was adjacent to the old, unused wine cellars. One evening, tapping softly on the stones behind a tapestry, she heard a faint, hollow echo. Was there a space behind the wall? An idea, desperate and wild, took root. She couldn't break the crystal window or the locked door. But perhaps the mountain itself could offer an escape. Using one of the hairpins from her fine new clothes, she began, with infinite patience, to scrape at the mortar around a single stone in the hidden spot. The chain on her wrists made the work agonizingly slow, the tiny scritch-scritch sound her only companion during the lonely days. It was a race against time and sanity. The Baron was growing more unstable, and her nightly performances were pushing him closer to an edge she could not yet see. The finale. Gather close now, for the end is here. For a month, Elena worked on the stone, and for a month, she sang the Baron into a frenzy. He now looked gaunt, his icy eyes fever bright. He began insisting on 2, then 3 performances a night. Sing the lead stud, he would demand, his voice slurred with brandy. Sing of the eternal sleep. The night of her planned escape arrived. The stone was loose. One more good push and she could squeeze into the dank, unknown space behind it. She had saved bread from her meals, stolen a candle and matches. Her plan was to vanish into the labyrinth of cellars and find a way out through the montaigne's underbelly, a path Luca had once mentioned in his whispers. But the Baron came early that night. And he was not alone. He dragged in a terrified, elderly man, Father Anselm from the village. The priest was shaking, clutching his Bible. "She sings like an angel, Father," the Baron slurred, his grip tight on the priest's arm. "But I must know. Is it a gift from God, or a Satan's call from the devil? You will listen. You will tell me." This was her moment. The Baron was unhinged, the priest was a witness, and the stone was ready. As the Baron shoved the priest into a chair, Elena began to sing. But not a tragic aria. She sang a lullaby, the same simple village song she had sung on her first night. She poured into it all the innocence, the stolen sunlight, the love for her aunt, the memory of Luca's kind eyes. It was a song of everything pure he had tried to steal. Father Anselm wept openly. "It is divine," he choked out. "Baron, this is a gift of grace. You must let her go." "Lies," the Baron roared. The beauty of the song, so opposite to the darkness festering in him, was the final crack. A lunge not for Elena, but for the fireplace, grabbing the iron poker. "If I cannot have its truth, no one will." As he advanced, madness in his eyes, Elena darted behind the tapestry. With a strength born of pure survival, she shoved the loose stone. It gave way with a grinding crunch, revealing a black hole. She scrambled through, the chain on her wrists catching and clanging against the rock. The Baron howled in rage and scrambled after her, but his larger frame got stuck in the gap. Elena, now in a narrow, pitch-black tunnel, didn't look back. She ran, feeling her way along the slimy wall, the sounds of the Baron's roars and the priest's prayers fading behind her. She ran until her lungs burned, following the faintest draft of cold, fresh air. The tunnel sloped upward, twisted, and then, blessed sight, a crack of moonlight. She pushed through a curtain of ivy and roots, tumbling out onto the rocky mountainside, free under the vast, starry sky. Back in the tower room, Father Anselm, finally wrenching the Baron free from the hole, found the man broken. Not physically, but in spirit. His perfect, possessed beauty was gone, escaped into the night. All that remained was the echo of a song he could never cage again. Elena found her way to a neighboring town. Luca, true to his heart, had waited nearby, hoping against hope. They fetched her and vanished into the wide world. And Grendel Hall? They say the Baron sits alone in the music room, listening to the wind howl through the valley. And sometimes, on that wind, he swears he can hear a ghost of a song, a lullaby, pure and free, a beautiful sound that now, and forever, belongs to no one but the open air. So remember, my dears, you can chain a bird, but you can never, ever chain its song. Now, who wants more tea?